This is Dr. Diane Norden with the Sheep and Goat Health Team. In this presentation, I will cover suggested activities and reporting requirements for the following three goals: sheep and goat surveillance, sheep and goat, cervid, and equine education and outreach, and sheep and goat, cervid, and equine preparedness and response. Sheep and goat surveillance goals include encouraging reporting, investigating, and sampling scrapie suspect sheep and goats, collecting all targeted animals regardless of their traceability at regulatory scrapie slaughter surveillance sites, maintaining current and adding new regulatory scrapie slaughter surveillance collection sites, and to increase scrapie surveillance of sheep and goats from higher risk and underrepresented flocks or populations and higher risk animals such as mature animals found dead on farm or at livestock markets. Note that we are no longer targeting black-faced sheep, Montadales, or Southdown breeds of sheep. Targeted animals include all sheep and goats from 18 months of age up to 72 months of age as evidenced by examination of the teeth, regardless of their traceability, and any mature animal that dies prior to slaughter or is condemned on antemortem inspection, is non-ambulatory, exhibits central nervous system signs, or exhibits intense rubbing, abrasions, or rough, thickened, and/or hyperpigmented skin. Additional sheep and goat surveillance goals are to conduct surveillance to meet or exceed the state of origin-based surveillance annual sampling minimums for sheep and goats. States that do not meet their FY23 sampling minimums will need to have decreased their sampling deficiency by 50% as compared to FY 2022, or otherwise demonstrate that a significant effort was made to meet the minimums and to maintain consistent state status. Please see VSG 7201.1 for additional information on states not meeting their sampling minimums. A link to your state of origin sampling minimums can be found in the Cooperative Agreements Guide. You can monitor your state's progress towards these minimums by accessing the Scrapie Monthly Report posted on the public-facing Scrapie Eradication page. Sheep and goat surveillance samples can come from current or new regulatory scrapie slaughter surveillance collection sites. Agreement funding can be used to pay state personnel salaries to collect and submit samples at these sites, or to pay slaughter plants to submit whole heads to Remington or to another centralized collection site, to store whole heads for subsequent collection and submission by state employees off-site, to remove whole heads and for state employees to collect and submit, and the plant can collect and submit the tissues themselves. Templates exist for the sampling agreement and for statements of work for each of those options listed in this slide. See the links in your recipient guide. Guidelines for allowable costs can also be found in comments of those statement of work templates. Note that the templates are written for agreements with USDA and will need to be modified for cooperator use. It is preferred that USDA enter into agreements with the slaughter plants. Note that with options 2 and 3, there still can be involvement with state sample collection. Personnel costs can also be included for the time spent visiting slaughter plants to get them signed up as an RSSS site. Other surveillance strategies can also be considered. Another source of scrapie surveillance samples is found dead animals. On-farm necropsy testing can include collecting and submitting necropsy samples from scrapie suspects or age-eligible found dead animals on farm, at livestock markets, or other sites. Another option is to give the Remington shipping boxes to producers or other market personnel to ship heads from found dead animals to our centralized collection agency in Remington, Indiana. Note that a statement of works template is available for markets to compensate them for their efforts in assisting with live animal sampling and necropsy submissions of dead or euthanized sheep and goats. Collecting rectal biopsies from live animals is another source of sheep and goat surveillance samples. Rectal biopsies of producer animals or animals at markets for states struggling to meet minimums is an option. For sheep, concurrent collection of samples for genotyping and rectal biopsy, then submitting the biopsies to NBSL once the genotype results are known, is the preferred method. It saves money because NBSL will test only the scrapie susceptible animals. For goats, just collect the rectal biopsy, no genotyping is needed. Note that for all scrapie surveillance activities, USDA will pay for the boxes, the shipment of boxes, the laboratory costs, including the IHC testing and genotype testing, through our existing contracts. Most collection supplies can be obtained through NVSL and shouldn't be included in cooperative agreement costs. Acceptable expenses include personnel costs and supplies such as needles, disposable gloves, lidocaine gel, and any other materials not supplied by NVSL. Reporting for non-regulatory scrapie slaughter surveillance activities is pretty simple. We just need to know the number of suspect sheep or goats investigated, the number of sheep and goats sampled, the number of flocks sampled, the number of flocks genotyped to identify animals for live animal testing, and the number of positive flocks identified. Remember that only those activities that are funded through the cooperative agreement should be included in these reports. Templates for all these reports are available in your cooperative agreement recipients guide. For slaughter surveillance reporting, we'd like to know the number of animals sampled, the number of samples entered into VSLS, the Veterinary Services Laboratory Submission System, the number of positive flocks identified, and any visits made to slaughter plants for purposes other than sample collection, for example, to encourage them to join as a collection site or any other training needed for those personnel, and the number of new RSSS sites added. Sheep and goat, Cervid and equine education and outreach goals include using education and outreach to increase identification and record-keeping compliance for sheep and goats. For reporting and submission of animals with clinical signs, for example, scrapie, CWD, foreign animal diseases, or high-impact emerging diseases in sheep, goats, cervids, and equids. Submission of found dead mature sheep for scrapie testing, and producer awareness of how to use genotyping and other strategies to prevent scrapie introduction. Specific activities could include development and distribution of pamphlets, newsletters, signage for markets, or attendance at producer meetings. For sheep and goat, cervid and equine outreach and education reporting, if a presentation was made, provide a description of the outreach or education activity or meeting, and include a description of the audience, the numbers in attendance, description of educational materials, the method of outreach, a copy of any materials created, and the name of the meeting, location, and organization holding the meeting. If no presentation was made, please provide the name and organization providing the training or meeting, the purpose of attending, the name and job title of who attended, the location of the training or meeting, the outcome, and the agenda if it is available. For sheep and goat, cervid and equine preparedness and response objectives, activities could include conducting disease response activities, increasing the number of flocks in our database, the SES scrapie database, and the percentage of those flocks that use official identification, and monitoring and enforcing ID and record keeping compliance at concentration points. For sheep and goat preparedness and response reporting, note that there is a template available in your recipient's guide for reporting disease response activities. We'll want you to provide the disease of interest in any activity performed. Templates are available for ID compliance reporting from your program manager. If the cooperator does not do all the inspections at a given concentration point, each column of the report represents an individual inspection completed by the cooperator. However, if the cooperator does do all the inspections at a given concentration point, each column of the report represents the total number of animals inspected for a given concentration point for the reporting period.